Hey, how's it going? I'm back from the track. Went drifting. If you didn't see in that video, I have the link right up here. Check it out. But I've got to definitely check over the car because I did crash it pretty hard once. So basically what happened is I overshot the drift. So I didn't have enough angle in my steering to keep it sideways. So I spun out. And when I spun out, since I was so close to the right of the lane, I went into the ditch kind of, and there's like these little bits of protectors and they're supposed to guide you to keep you on the track. I went and grinded the whole thing. So literally my car was doing the splits over this thing and the whole bottom of the car was just rubbing like crazy. I haven't checked underneath, so it's gonna be a surprise for both of us. I honestly don't think too much happened, but we're gonna see. I know the coolant lines ripped off the bottom because they do run underneath my frame, so let's take a look. Here is the coolant line and it looks like it sucked up a bunch of gravel and there's scratches all up among here, which is fine because this is going to be cut off this winter because I'm going to be tube chassising the whole rear end, so I really don't care. So that really protected things. My rad's fine. What else is here? Looks like my shifter hit the ground pretty hard. I'm gonna have to make sure that didn't ruin my transmission because that could potentially bend the shaft to shift the gears. So what else? A little bit more scratching on the bottom of these guys, but honestly there's not too much damage. Oil pan is fine. Thankfully all these bars that I put underneath protected it. It was literally like I was going down a rail on a skateboard. It was actually pretty cool. So it looks like this is the only body damage I've got, which is honestly really impressive because I was literally like no wheels were on the ground type of deal, catching air and grinding on this thing. But I can deal with that because I do have a roll cage and that is what is keeping the car together. But like, as you can see, this is still an MX-3 on the bottom. Like it's still factory stuff under here. Yeah, so this is the coolant line setup I have and it did pull off on the left, but here it's still completely intact. I am obviously going to be redoing all this because I don't like how I originally did things, because now I know better and I can make things a lot cleaner and a lot more efficient. So that will be on my to-do list for sure. But for temporarily, I want to go drifting again. I do want to go drifting again this summer. So what I want to do is I want to see if this engine's still healthy. This is the built engine. I want to see if it's healthy today and check the compression, check the plugs, see if it's actually running condition to take another beating at the track for drifting. And if it is gonna be fine, I'm gonna get a huge rad and I'm going to mount it up here. So literally when I don't have my hats on, the rad's gonna be up here and it's cooling the rad down from the wind going over the actual roof. And because my rad's in here, and when I'm just on the limiter the entire track, it's not cooling it, and you can't really blame it because it's in the trunk. So I'm gonna do that just so I can get another weekend out of it, and then this winter when I finalize things and do the tube chassis, I'll make rigid solid mounts. But for now, like I'll get in a like next day rad and I'll weld one up and it'll be all good. But I still need to find out if this engine's okay. I'm gonna fire it up because I remember once I did crash it, the engine did not start. So I have to look into that for sure. I don't want to put all this like janky work into just getting one more drift event for the season and have it not work. So to check and make sure that this is running okay, I need to fix this coolant line and put some fluid in it because I want to be able to tell myself if the head gaskets are good and if all that stuff is separated like it's supposed to be. So I have to clean all this out somehow. There's like literally rocks in here. So that's not good. All right, I'm going to check my catch can. Hopefully it's not full like it was the first time I checked this, the track day, right after I did the all-wheel drive drifting. So we'll see real quick. Oh, she's full. Yeah, the catch can is fairly full, which does concern me, but we'll move forward and look deeper into how the engine's running. Now I'm just filling up the coolant system with water. There's a little bit more broken. a hose in there that's leaking. Honestly, she seems like she's running mint, so I'm just gonna go ahead and continue on with my rad setup I was thinking about. So what I'm thinking about doing is putting a rad up here. So when my hatch is off, I can have a rad, and the normal hatch can also go over top of it. This is just gonna be a temporary setup until I rip all this out. I just want to drive it one more time. It's August. I still have lots of more time to drive, so I want to make it cool better because I can only get about half a lap without the car like overheating really hard. Every time I drove it, it was overheating really hard, and there's no point in just literally beating the literal piss out of the engine if you don't have to. So I'm gonna put a nice aluminum rad up here, just a cheap $100 rad, run some janky hoses, and just have a good time. Weld it to the side here. All this is gonna be cut out anyways because I'm gonna be tubing it all, and just get a couple more laps in. It'll be freaking sweet. So I think that's the plan. I'm gonna order those. So what I'm gonna do next is I'm going to do a cold compression test. I'm gonna take out all the plugs and compression test each cylinder, mark it down, and see how well this engine is healthy wise. So I inspected the plugs, and all the plugs look great. All of them are looking like they have proper timing, and as far as I can see, they aren't running lean. To truly check if these are running rich or lean, you have to cut the threads off and look inside. I do not have spare spark plugs at this very moment. They are in my Chevy. So as soon as I get back my Chevy, I will do that. But for now, these are gonna be fine, and I don't see any sign of being lean at all. So to check for timing, you wanna make sure that it's burning clean to the end of the actual belt right there. So if it's burning clean to there, your timing's mint. If it's not burning all the way down, it's not enough timing. Or if it's burning all the way around to the flat spot of the actual spark plug, that means it's too much timing. So you just want it to kiss down to here, and you can also adjust by changing plugs to a colder or hotter plug. But if you have the proper plug, that is the way how you check them. And like I said, again, you got to take off the thread. So you just get a grinder, grind all the bottom off, like right down here where the threads are, and then you pop it off, and then you can read the white. And basically, if it's like this, so as you can see, this is one without the threads, so it's cut off compared to this one, and this is what's inside, and this is how you tell if it's lean or rich, sorry. So it's white, then it gets darker. So at that dark spot, that's what you're reading. If it was right up black to the very end here, you're way too rich. If it's in the middle, you're a little rich. If you're right where this is, that is a perfect mix. So you just want it up a little bit from the bottom here. And if this is all completely white from top to bottom and no like dark spots, that means you're hella lean and you need to start adding fuel. So yeah, I'm just explaining that without taking the whole my current plugs apart, because I've tested these before. I always check, but I don't have spares. I go through plugs all the time. So I literally check my plugs every time I go to the track, grind off the ends, see if any cylinders are running lean, and go from there. But yeah, I can't do that at this very moment because I don't have spare plugs, but that's what you're looking for. And for the actual strap here, that's what you're looking for as well, just down to end. So now I'm going to mark down the compression. This engine is cold, it hasn't been ran in like 48 hours, so it's going to be definitely cold. So what I'm going to do is just mark down all my numbers in a row with the correct numbering of the actual engine. So my compression tester, they're very cheap. You can get them on Amazon for like 30 bucks or something like that. So basically all I need is this one rubber right here and this, and attach it together and then shove it right in, because it's already got the right threads to go into the KL engines that I run. So you just thread this into where the actual spark plug goes. Make sure all of them are removed, because you will save your starter, number one, and number two, the engine can crank over quicker. So I'm going to thread it down into number one, which is right here, and then crank it 4 times or 5 times or 6 times. You just gotta make sure it's more than like 2 times, because it takes a couple seconds to get the actual engine speed up. So whatever you're doing, make sure you do it the same for each cylinder, so there's some sort of accuracy there. So this one's at about 90 PSI in that cylinder, which is very low. So I'm gonna have to write that down and just kind of suck it up. I'm gonna do this to all the cylinders. I'm just gonna go through it quickly and show you the progress through them. Okay, so this is the first cylinder. I'm gonna check that one. We'll probably be around 100, and then same with that. I'm just gonna go through them all, do the exact same thing, 5 cranks. You'll hear it go dun, 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 dun. On the 5th one, I stop. Battery's a little dead, so the compression numbers might be a little bit low, but as long as they are fairly consistent, you want between 10%. Like 10% is fine for sendageables, so I'm just gonna get that all working. Okay, here's my compression numbers. Keep in mind, this engine is low compression. It's 8.5 to 1 compression. I know these numbers are definitely low, but the engine was cold and no fuel was in there, no heat was in there, so it's definitely low. But this is enough to make it run. It will run, and I think I can get another vent out of it. I'm not sure if the head gasket's blown, but I do not think it is completely gone, because I do have a decent amount of compression at least, or at least it's fairly 190, 90, 90, 87, or 97, 105. It's not great, but I'm gonna have to rip this guy apart after I'm done with it and find out what's wrong. So I didn't build this engine, and obviously it does have low compression. But what I'm getting at is I'm gonna run it anyways, because why not? Rip it apart, miss all the fun in the season. I'm just gonna maybe add some fuel, maybe 5-10% of fuel, let it do its thing and have a lot of fun. So I'm planning on going to another drift event. As I've told you, I'm getting a rad, yada yada yada. So I'm gonna put everything back together and then start ripping apart my current cooling system and upgrade it to a setup that's going to be in the open, where it will actually get some cold air. So now it's time for me to remove this rad that will never be going back in. Take the fans off, hoses off, rip the rad out, and then do something with all the metal that is in there, because it's just gonna be in the way, because I'm not putting a rad down there. So I got the rad out. It even had my custom catch can for water. As you can see, it's professionally TIG welded together, just like all my normal stuff. This was one of the first things I've ever fabricated. This was my mount for my rad in the rear. And as you can see, it's pretty stout, like it's pretty strong. Welds are there for sure. Yeah, welds are there for sure. Honestly, this was the first thing I've ever done, and that's how you learn, right? Get the bubblegum welder out and start bogging. Obviously, I've learned a lot along the way. Now I'm TIG welding and everything, so that's how you learn. You gotta screw things up to make things right. So I'm going from a stock MX3 rad to a aluminum dual core rad. I haven't even opened it yet. I also got a couple hoses because I ripped a couple crashing my car, so I'm gonna have to open this up. Fancy stuff right here. I don't usually buy good products because I'm a cheap moth, if you know what I'm saying. So basically, when you're ordering a rad for your car and you're building something really dumb like this, You just want to find something that has the same diameter pipe for your actual rad hose. So when you get your hoses to it, it goes on and that's that. I'm going to be obviously welding in my own mounts. So all I literally looked for on Amazon was a big-ish rad that's cheap, and it has the same tube here as my car, so it'll bolt on easy and just need the lengthened tube. So this one is an inch thicker. This is a double core, so I'm gonna have twice the water now, and it's also aluminum. So I'm pretty stoked, pretty stoked. This rad was $125. Honestly, you can't really go any cheaper and get that type of quality. Like, it's all TIG welded, and I'm pretty impressed actually. So this thing's gonna be bad to the bone. So here's my air tank for my airbag setup. I think I'm gonna have to move it to get the rad on the angle I'd like, and I've got quite a bit of room in here. So I'm gonna unbolt it, and then I'm gonna move it around and see where I want my rad. All right, I think this is where I'm gonna be putting my rad on an angle. I used to have it pointing down, so it was sucking the air from underneath the car and going out the bumper holes right back here. But I'm gonna go with a different theory, and I'm gonna have it sucking air from the top. So I'm gonna have to cut a hole into my actual hatch here and then put some sort of ducting later on, but I'm probably not even gonna be running a hatch for drifting or anything. And it should get lots of air. But if it still needs help, I'm gonna have to put a duct on here to keep the engine heat away from the rad. The setup this way always worked fine because the rad was sitting about like this rather than like this. It worked fine on the highway for highway use and everything, but like beating on it slow, like it didn't have quite enough airflow. And now this one's a little bit thicker. So this is the way I wanna do it. It's a little bit less out of my way rather than having the top of the rad here. It's actually here. So now I've got all this extra room for just working on the car. It's just way more open. And now I can route the actual air from the top to go underneath. And then I'm gonna cut a couple holes into the bottom of the bumper just to get some more added flow to remove the air out of the rad. So I just grinded some marks right where I'm going to make brackets for attaching the rad to the chassis, and I found little bolts. I always buy bolt kits, and there's 3 bolts that I'm going to use, 1 on the bottom, 2 on the top, and I've cut them shorter because it was going to bottom out in the threads. So all I've got to do now is grind this to a point or sand it, and then it'll thread back in mid. So now what I've got to do is make brackets. So I'm going to drill a hole that is going to fit these bolts in. I'm going to drill 3 of them side by side and then cut out 3 brackets and then cut them to length and then weld them in. Rad is welded in, brackets are all done. So now what I've got to do is I have to mount my fans to the back of my rad, which is on this side, not this side, this side. I don't want that. I'm gonna make them suck, so it's sucking the cold air from in here and then spits it out underneath the car. So what I've got to do is do that, and then I've got to run the lines, and then I can start adding coolant to the system. I got the fans on, all the wiring's done, and now I've got to do the actual coolant hoses. This is gonna be the hardest part because I've got to take out the firewall, undo the screws to get off the hose on the other side, and then I've got to run the hoses to here in a way that looks okay and is fairly easy to do, because I used to run them underneath the car like this. And I don't know if I want to do that anymore because it literally got ripped off the bottom of the car when I crashed, and then it screwed me for the rest of the day. So I'm gonna try and route it in here, like kind of janky like, and just get it in here, because once the season's over and I'm done driving this car, I'm cutting the entire rear end out, even the back part of the cage, and I'm starting over. I'm keeping obviously the front cage, but I'm starting over and I'm making this all tube chassis because I want to get rid of this subframe and a whole bunch of other stuff, like these tubs. Don't want those, don't want these. Everything's gonna be gone, and then I'm gonna be making it all tube chassis, and it will be much lighter and much stronger. So I'm really stoked on that. Then I'm obviously gonna have to reset up my rad. So that's why I'm just kind of like putting in a couple mounts, getting things to work. And I wanna make sure that this rad position is optimal. And once I do the final stage of building the rear part of this car, I will know exactly what needs to be changed, or if I need to make ducts, shrouds for the fans, etc. Got the firewall off, so now I've got to come in through behind the seats here and underneath, and then I have to get the tube off down there. It's really not fun because the turbo's here, the firewall's here, the seat's there. It's interesting, that's for sure. So I got the hose out. It's very long because it has to go in front of the engine and the back and then up. So it would go like this. And there was another one on the passenger side. So what I've got to do here is figure out a way to route everything so I can potentially get it up here. Because if I can get that one to go around and go to the bottom, and then the one on the passenger side over there go to the top, I'm set. And then I'm not going to hurt anything underneath. If I hit the dirt, I'm gonna hit just metal, and that's fine because all that stuff doesn't really matter as much. It does matter, but then I won't blow coolant lines and I can get one more rip. Sweet, I got the rear hose completely in for the lower. This is the return. This is the in from the hot. So what I've got to do now is get the hot side. So that is the passenger side to the top here. Then I'm pretty well done. The thing I really got to keep in mind here is you can't have the rad hoses higher than the fill points. There's a fill point I can use if I would like, but I probably won't. But also there's a fill point right here. This is the factory one. So what I've got to do is keep the hoses beneath that, and then it'll be easy to bleed the system because the highest point is where the air is going to be, right? And if a hose is up here and you're filling it here, you'll never get the air out of here. So you got to make sure that if you're doing a custom setup for whatever you're doing. But yeah, honestly, in the future, I'm going to be rerouting these and switching them instead of pointing forward to backward. And same with the back one. This is temporary AF, because I just want to drift it once or twice more, maybe go to the quarter miles. So it looks like everything's hooked up. I got my in and my out on both ends ready to go. So now all I got to do is add some water, fire it up, burp the system, and see how it's working. So I'm having trouble filling this up, and it is because my hose is just slightly higher than my fill up. So I've got a bit of trouble here. It's gonna be hard to get air in the system, or air out of the system, so I'm gonna run it and do the best I can here and get the air out. But I think I might have to fill up from one of these joints. So open this, fill the rad, open, and then have this, fill that to get all the air out. But we'll see. I'm gonna run it and try it. What I've got to do is I've got to crack this loose and fill it up from here. It's not going to work from there. I'm going to have to figure out something else later on. Because when I had my old rad, I would also have to crack this open and get the air out from there. So that kind of sucks, but later on, I'm gonna be making all custom tubing to run the actual water, so that won't be a problem because I can tuck it in wherever I want. So I'm just gonna have to crack this open right here and then add some water in here. Let's see if there's water in here. Nothing. So that is proving that that is the highest point. So what I can just do is just fill it like this. That's not a problem. As you can see, I just cracked them both loose, filled it up. That's the highest point. So there shouldn't really be much water in there, or much water. There shouldn't be much air in here at all. So I'm gonna run the system, get it up to temp, and then kill it, and then refill this. I can probably just crack it a little bit. I used to do this on the other side up too, and fill it up with this. I might just do that right now, and just make sure that I have all the air out I can. I'm feeling the top rad hose and it is getting warm, so that means there's not really much air in it because there's actually water flowing through it. Just letting her warm up, checking for leaks. The rad's starting to get warm, so there's definitely some circulation going on, which is sick. I'm gonna let it get to 190 and then I'm gonna kill it and check everything, but in the meantime I'm gonna check my fans and make sure everything's working good. Sucking, pulling the heat out, exactly what you want, in my situation at least. So it's sucking air from here. So it's sucking air from out here and going into here. I'm obviously gonna have to put plates and stuff to protect it from the engine heat and make a shroud of some sort and a duct, but this will be pretty sweet. I turned my fans off. I'm gonna let it get hot, gonna let it kind of boil itself to death a bit. I'm gonna let it get to about 200 and then I'm gonna turn the fans on and see how quickly it cools it down. So right now we're at 185 and we'll see how long it takes to creep up. So we're at about 200 now. I'm gonna turn on the fans and time how long it takes to cool it down to temp. Starting now. These are honest results. So it got up to 207, 208, and then got right down to about 90, like 190. So it dropped 17 degrees within 2 minutes and 50 seconds. That is better than it was because before it would boil. Like once it was hot, you could have it idling all day long and it would not cool down. Just idling, it did cool itself down. It took 2 minutes and 52 seconds to go right back down to operating temperature. I am happy with that, but I do want it better. I don't have shrouds yet. I don't have holes in the bumper like I should. Like this is, there's 5, 6 holes here. I'm gonna add one for sure. I like that look, but it needs to cool too, right? And then a lot of the air is coming down through here, which is fantastic. But some of it's getting caught by this back part of the bumper. So I think I'm gonna cut the back of the bumper just so air can actually escape better. So that'll be, I've got a couple things to do, but it looks sick, as you can see. Nice aluminum rod in there. It's definitely cooling better. Definitely cooling better. I've got some tweaks and maybe I will change it in the future and see if something else works better. But I think for now, this is pretty good. I didn't even burp it. So literally I filled it like I did on the camera and that was it. Then I did this testing. So there could be a little bit of air in there and that might help it even better. So I'm looking pretty good here, guys. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna drill one hole out here. I think this is a 3, so I'm gonna drill it a 3, then maybe find a small hole saw, put one there, and then I'm going to cut out this bubble part on the bumper. So the bumper comes down in cups, so it's catching air in there, and without that it'll let a lot more air out, I think. I don't want a hole saw in here because I think that's personally really ghetto looking. The car looks factory from the outside. And if you put a license plate on here, you cannot tell that it has like 5 freaking engines in it. So I'm just gonna do that, try it, and worst case, I change up the rad setup because I honestly don't want to put any more holes in the bumper. Looks too sexy. All right, now we're talking. I've got so many more holes. I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 more holes. That is quite a bit of surface area. If I added all that up, it would probably be at least 2 or 3 of these, because I added this one, so that's already 1, right? Yada, yada, yada. So I also cut out the bottom here. This was all covered up to about there. So this was just basically a parachute. You can see where it started to, this is the factory spot, and then I cut this out. Look how much more air can come through now. And you can really tell from the top. When you look down in here, you can see the ground. Before I couldn't see the ground there, because I've got this bar, and this bar is full of wiring. I can't do anything with that. But from underneath, she is looking pretty good. So you can see the rad up here, you can see the rad down there. The only thing that's in the way is that, and that is completely okay with me. I feel much better now. I feel like it will cool significantly better with all that open. Damn, that's a huge opening now. Gotta let it breathe. It's gotta breathe on the way in, and it's gotta breathe on the way out of the rad. And if I can do that, I'm well on my way to having a reliable drift car, which would be super sick. So that is it. Got new rad in. Hopefully it's gonna cool a bunch better. It theoretically should. It's twice as thick. It's made of aluminum, and I made more holes in the bumper, and I'm going to continue on and put a hole into the actual hatch and let air come in through the top of the car and down, and let that rad breathe. All right, we'll see you in the next one. Like, comment, and subscribe. And if you haven't seen my drift video from last week, check it out. It was sweet.